Hello and welcome back. In this video we are going to be looking at inheritance and polymorphism. So what is inheritance and what is polymorphism? So they are very important pillars of the object oriented programming style, right? So we already have an idea of what OOPS, that is OOPS, is. So inheritance and polymorphism are very important pillars of OOPS that help us to recreate a particular class, to you know give a particular class the attributes of another class. So that is called a parent child relationship. And a polymorphism is something that when we use a single or a particular entity in multiple forms, right? So this is the basic meaning, and to understand further, let's get right into the coding. Right. So to understand this relationship of a parent class and a child class, we'll take a very simple example, right? So for example, we have an entity called a person. Okay, so a person has certain attributes, like let's say name, right? And um, let's call it first name. We have the first name, we have the last name. I will comment this out. Right, so we have the first name, we have the last name, we have the person's age, right? And we have the person's gender, and we have the person's let's say social security number, right? So we have all these attributes associated with this person, right? So what if we have another entity, let's say student, right? So now we know that logically a student is also a person, right? A student will have everything that a person has along with something else. For example, the student may have an extra attribute, let's say roll number and marks, right? So if we have a student, then the student should have the attributes of both a student and a person, right? So student is derived from this entity person. All students are persons, right? So from this logic we can understand in a basic method as to what inheritance is. Now the class student inherits from its parent class, that is person. Now student also has all these values, right? So they also have all these values, but it is not efficient if I have to copy and paste each and every value that is there in the person onto a student, right? I can simply derive the student class from the person class, and we'll see how do we do that. So let's take an example of this particular class that I have defined. So class person has this init function that we have discussed in how to create classes, right? So the init function is a function that gets invoked by default when you create an object of that particular class. And self.first name is a variable, like the variable name is first name, and this is an attribute to the person class. And self.last name, right? So we'll add a few more. Self.age, right, is equal to, let's say, age, and I'll add an age here. And yeah, that's it as of now. And let's go to this function that is defined print name, and once you call that function, I'll have my name here, right? So what we're going to do now is we are going to create a class called student that derives from this class person. Now I have defined this class student that derives from this class person. So this is the syntax for inheritance, right? So once I do this, I need to create attributes for student, right? So for example, if I need, let's say, a roll number or a marks for the student, I can define it here, right? So for example purposes, I will give nothing here. So if I don't have anything to give to a derived class, I will give the keyword pass that will give a empty object the inheritance, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create objects for the classes that we have defined. So here I have two objects, right? X is the person object with the name Robert and Downey Jr. with a age of 50, and I am invoking the print name function, which should display the name here. And y is my student with the name Tom Holland with the age of 22, and y dot print name, again I'm calling this print name function. If you notice, I'm calling this from a student's object, right? So student object does not contain any attributes, but what we have done is we have inherited this particular function into the student, and hence we can use it, right? So we don't see any errors as of now, and we will execute this. Clear the output. I'll save it and I'll run. Yes, we have our output as Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland, right? So that is the function of the print name. So it prints the name, and yes, we have everything as we expected. So I hope you understood what inheritance is, right? So now let's move on to polymorphism. Now to understand polymorphism, we are going to be defining a new function. Let's say define age, say print age, right? So this will print the age of that particular object. So print self.age, right? So this is what I need, and I will do the same thing in the student, right? So I know we are actually deriving it, but this time I'm going to show you something that makes you understand where polymorphism comes in, right? So we have this function called printAge, and both of them are, it's there in both of these objects, right? So if I give, let's say, student dot print age, what should I get? And if I get percent dot print age, what should I be seeing as the display, right? So we will check this now. I'm getting 50 and 22, right? So the respective ages of person and student. Now when I am doing the printing this in the student, right? So what happens is the function basically gets overridden, right? So I do have the age of the student now getting printed. The meaning is I'm using a single name of the function, but just because I'm using it in a child class, the function gets overridden so that only the child class attributes are being used. This is one example of polymorphism, right? So for example, if I have something that is unique to the child class and the same method is there in the parent class, polymorphism lets me to use the same name as two different functions just because the classes are different, right? So that is the meaning of polymorphism. One single entity behaving in multiple ways is polymorphism. So that is what is happening here. The function printage is printing something else when it is called from the person, and it is printing something else when it's called from the student, right? So this is the difference between, you know, object oriented programming and functional oriented programming. OOPS is giving us this extra features of inheritance and polymorphism so it can model the real world pretty well, right? So I hope you understood everything in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll meet in the next one.